Good morning, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the annual conference of 11-Bit Studios. So we'll tell you what's up, what has happened and what will be happening, what our plans are. 2018, a brief summary, a very brief one. That's the best year in the company's history, absolutely record-breaking in every respect. Let me remind you two most important figures from the report published yesterday. The revenues surpassed 82,000 zlotys, and absolutely record-breaking. Three times better than the best figure ever from the previous years, and the net profit of 37.5 million zlotys. Actually, it's better because let me remind you that the result contains the provision for shares. So actually, in cash terms, it's 6 million plus. So where did this result come from? The three key events from last year. Let me remind you, three major events. The premiere of Moonfighter, the premiere of Frostpunk, and strong sales of This War of Mine. So I'm very happy because it was the first year where our revenues are very nicely diversified. And I think we will be showing this to you also in the ensuing slide, how well our games have been doing last year and the previous years. Where did it come from? The good year of 2018. We're celebrating the 10 years of the company's establishment. As you will know, as you can see here, it was a good couple of years ago. There was just a handful of people. And quite funnily, when we incorporated the company, there were four people, four of them on the board, so we were very well prepared for the expansion. Right now, we have just celebrated the joining of 100th person on the team, and soon we'll have more people. So there's 100 people on board. There's soon gonna be more of them. How did it all start? The first game, Anomaly. Let me show you a couple of figures, what it looked like. It was launched back in 2011, 8 years back. The premiere price, only $10. The first day's revenues, as you can see, $16,000, and the total revenues over the last 8 years. Of course, these are only slight amounts that have been flowing in of late. The total amount, $1.2 million. The next important game, a milestone, This War of Mine, launched in 2014. The premiere price twice higher, $20. The first day's revenues, $170,000, 10 times more than for the first game that we published, and the total revenues by the end of last year were amounted to $21 million. As you can see, the scale grew significantly vis-a-vis the premiere of the previous game, and Frostpunk, another milestone. The price was higher again because that's the pathway we're trying to follow. $30. The first day's revenues, 1.7, almost $1.8 million. This is way more than the revenues from the whole life cycle of our first game, Anomaly, which I think nicely shows what the pathway has been that we've been able to cross over the first 10 years. The revenues by the end of 2018, $14 million. I can also share with you that after year-end, the revenues generated by Frostpunk on Steam, and this compares very well because Frostpunk is available for PCs, so Steam is still the most important platform, so the revenues from Frostpunk have been higher on Steam than for This War of Mine that was launched 4 years ago. And for Frostpunk, we've been able to surpass it over 9 or 10 months. We also achieve those results owing to being a global company. We're acting global. This is very helpful in the dynamic growth. We can say that we've sold over 10 million games. We've significantly crossed that borderline, and our globality consists in that we are selling this globally, probably in the five most important markets: the US, the EU, Asia, with a predominant position held by China, a good position in the former CIS, former Soviet Union countries, that has even improved for Frostpunk. These are historical data, so you can hardly see it. We're also doing good in Australia, New Zealand, Oceania. So the global business has been one of the most important factors behind our dynamic growth, as you can tell by the graph depicting the increase of our revenues from 10 years back of 0.7 million up to 82 million. So we've increased our revenues 22 times. And it looks even better with regard to the net profit. In the first year, when we launched our first game, that's the way it looked. And this year, it was 37 million and plus 6 non-cash items. It's going to be 43. So this is also depicted by the valuation, the market cap of our company. It was 7 plus million. Now it's more than 700 million, and it could have actually surpassed the increase of 8,346, because the first price was 3.75 zlotys. Right now it's 313. I'm not sure what the quote is today. It's higher. That's good. So over the last 10 years, we've been able to do a lot. This is not the end of our way. This is just the good beginning. And I'm giving the floor over to Patrick, who will be telling you about what's going on and what will be going on in future. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here with you, even more so than I was last year, for two reasons. The first one being that last year we met, I think, before the premiere of Frostpunk, so our attention, as well as probably your attention, was first of all focused on that game. Since then, a couple of months since the premiere of Frostpunk, a lot has happened in the context of the entire story mentioned by Grzegorz. First of all, we accomplished, along with the premiere of Frostpunk and the assumptions, we've accomplished two key goals that we assumed internally, that were the milestones determining how we were coping in the market. First of all, we were able to prove that a meaningful game, that's the way we consider Frostpunk, can not only be a creative success story, but also a commercial success story. And this War of Mine was also a confirmation of this. As Frostpunk, we have a good strategy which is allowing us to develop creatively and also to expand business-wide. The next thing is the publishing expansion. I have the pleasure of cooperating very well with publishing, and I'm very happy that it's no longer an experiment. It's a well-greased machine, also supported by figures, and we wish to show those figures. So that's why we are trying to define the next step, because our appetites are growing, and right now we are focusing on increasing our scale and the commercial potential. We're not afraid of large projects. We want to have even greater projects, and we want to provide an alternative for AAA games. We don't want to enter that market. We wish to be an alternative for that market. Same scale, but different quality, to show that we can approach it differently. How do we want to do it? By multi-platform approach. We've given it a thought, and we're thinking how much more leverage we could put to this. And this multi-platform quality is very important for us. This might sound a little bit enigmatic, so I'll try to explain it. The multi-platform quality for us is, first of all, the question of presence and availability. As Grzegorz mentioned, Frostpunk is now a PC game, and still it's doing great. And we would like for our next titles to work in a slightly different way, irrespective of which platform the gamer prefers, which console they have access to. We would like them to be able to play the game on day one, not to have to wait. And this obviously still stems from the market potential. Of course, PC is our potential, has been our potential. Right now, we're thinking in terms of consoles and as well as PC, without forgetting mobile. And now that we have larger products with a greater scale, we can think about a much greater access to a much wider scope of recipients, and this impacts our activities at the studio level as well as publishing level or marketing level. So let me start with the studio. First of all, we don't want to port games. We're not going to port games. We're going to be designing and have been designing them already with key platforms in mind. That means that we can use the technology made available by the key platform, Xbox, PC3, PC4, and gameability is going to be just as well as good. We're talking about our key partners, and the next slides will show you what we think about, what we have in mind, and we make a very good partner, very interesting partner, providing value products, tier 1 products as they call them. Project 8 is our first game designed from scratch with consoles in mind. This is hugely important because the potential of the game is very much higher, and it's much more higher for the mainstream group of recipients. Each next game we'll be working on is also going to be prepared based on this philosophy. They're not going to be PC-based games to be ported. They're going to be prepared for the next generation or current generation or next generation. And this impacts the evolution of the studio. We know that to function like this, we have to prepare for this. These preparations are underway and are very much advanced. Right now, we are building 3 internal teams, and at the end of the day, owing to the recruitment processes that Gregorz mentioned, we would like them to have 50 to 60 people each. We've bought a new office. We're preparing the new infrastructure to be able to function effectively at each of the studio, publishing, and marketing levels. In the case of functioning, this is already going on. The Children of Morta is going to be the first 11-bit title, which will make its debut on all the consoles. It's going to be available on PC, Nintendo Switch, PC4, and Xbox One. Large platforms are an obvious priority to us for obvious reasons, but we're not forgetting the mobile market. And as you will have noticed lately, on March the 5th, the Big Cup appeared on mobile devices, and it broke even over the first week. Now it's another revenue source. Yesterday we had a premiere of This War of Mine, and from a business perspective, this is a standalone product. It's not a DLC that for people who already have This War of Mine stories. Everybody can buy This War of Mine stories, no matter if they have the basic game or not. Owing to this, we have a much much lower entry barrier, a larger scope of revenues, and we have a better exposure in platforms such as App Store or Google Store. Moonlighter is also going to be launched in the mobile version this summer. I don't think we've mentioned that. And importantly, it's not going to be a port, it's going to be a full adaptation. That means that it's completely redesigned in terms of the stealing, and the contents and entertainment balance is also adjusted. So since this is a game prepared on a mobile platform, is prepared as mobile first. Owing to this, it should be perceived much better by our recipients. Multi-platform is also a matter of marketing, because close cooperation with these partners provide new tools and marketing opportunities that we have access to. A couple of examples of what we've done and what we are doing. Last year, owing to changing the scale and having a very good portfolio, we've been able to organize the first Publisher Week on Steam. This is a dedicated 11B cells, and it provided to us, this cell gave us better revenues or profits even than for the first 3 years on Steam. And we've also launched the first dedicated campaign on the console. All the players in Germany, in US, elsewhere, they could buy it directly from the from Xbox, from their platform, and GX Rex soon to the event available soon. Children of Morta will be officially available on Nintendo and Microsoft stands at EGX Resd in London. So all those visiting them will be able to play 11-bit Studios game. And Nintendo Showcase were featured in the official channels. If you follow Nintendo's communication, you could find, as part of Nindy's conference, you could find our games promoted among such first league titles appearing on Nintendo Switch. To wrap it up, the multi-platform quality for 11-bit Studios means portfolio available on all key platforms, adequately for the platform quality, parallel premieres, current and next generation, a higher marketing and sales potential. The strong portfolio that I mentioned has been earning for us as a whole. That catalog is bringing profit, and new premieres are also bringing quite satisfactory profits. This War of Mine, despite this game having been in the market since Q1 2011, had a stronger first quarter of this year than Q1 last year. This shows how we can launch and support our product life cycle. So despite this Frostpunk, this as well as Frostpunk being a very good shot, this doesn't mean that we are working from one premiere to another, but we are promoting games consistently and support their over their life cycle. So their presence and the exposure of those products is growing. Today, this War of Mine has sold 4.5 million copies on all platforms. Frostpunk, which was launched last year, we've published 5 large content updates. So this is the strategy, game as a service, but everything within the 11-bit Studios strategy. This is our unique interpretation of game as a service. And since then, the Steam community has grown threefold, and summary media reach has grown fourfold. This shows that it wasn't a one-off. This is by no means decreasing the life cycle of this game. Frostpunk is only getting started. Very good, very positive reviews. Let me show you that the Steam reviews and journalist reviews Metascore are exactly the same. So the media reception and the reception of our players is just as good. The game is right now only available on PC and has sold 1.4 million copies to date. What we are in for in 2019, we'll be launching the first DLT, and interestingly, the scale will be available to the main scenario. The second season of the game will be launched by selling the season pass, and we are launching 2 announcements connected with this IP. I cannot unfortunately share it with you, but let me tell you that the first of those announcements has already been delicately launched on Twitter, and the community has started interpreting it. What might inspire that community? 20 minutes ago, a new message appeared on Twitter, making geographical coordinates available. Those of you who will be involved in this will find in 2 weeks' time whether the community's guesses have been right, and they will be able to share it. Moonlighter, it's available on all the current generation consoles. The summary sales have surpassed 500,000 copies, whereof Nintendo Switch has sold 140k plus copies. This is a very important platform showing how strong our IP is on current generation consoles. This year we will be launching, as in the case of Frostpunk, the first large paid DLC. More importantly, Moonlighter has been launched in Japan today. This is the first official premiere in this market. Right now it's available in the digital version. Soon it will also be available in local stores in boxes in Japan. This is the official QR which you can find in Japan, and it's also going to be available in the stores. Children of Morta, the premiere will take place in summer 2019. This shows the potential of the game. The wish lists are twice larger than Moonlighter's wish list 3 months ahead of the premiere, and then Frostpunk on 6 months ahead of the premiere. It will be available at the same time on all the on PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. A couple of more things, 3 more things. We will be launching 2 new internal projects. We've concluded 2 publishing projects. They are work in progress. The first announcement will take place in 2019, and we're increasing the scale of investment, of publishing investments. We're doing good. The publishing is doing good. So the target products were within the scale of about 2 million zlotys. Right now we're increasing the scale to 5 million zlotys per project because we can see the potential and we wish to pursue our publishing activities in that direction. I started by summarizing our future, but of course our past, but of course our present and past are most important. Patrick has already shared it with you, but I'll try to wrap it up again. 2019, to expand this information, is the publishing of Children of Morta, and that's the first game to be launched in all the key platforms on the premiere day. These are smaller premieres of our titles that we've published before on the next equipment platforms. These are ports of Moonlighter, This War of Mine, or Beat Cup. Importantly, we're entering the Japanese market. I'm very interested to see how Moonlighter is gonna be coping in the home of Nintendo. Frostpunk, Moonlighter, the premieres of paid add-ons, and that takes hard work, as it takes as game as a service. 2 new publishing contracts, as Patrick mentioned. 2 of them will be launched this year, and the start of 2 internal projects. This is also very important. We also said last year that we wanted to build those 3 internal teams. It's not that we still want to build them, we are actually building them, and these teams are up and running, they are working, and hence we'll be able to start work on 2 new projects because we have those teams in place. Of course, they are not quite the size that we're planning them to be, but they are already in place. This is all being accomplished, and as Patrick mentioned, we will have 2 more interesting announcements connected with our IPs that we're not going to share with them today, but we're going to tell you more about it in 2019. What's more for us in 2019? This is irrespective of the thing that we've been pursuing over the 2 years, focusing on the digital exposure. We're looking at the market, what else we can do to maximize our revenues from the games developed by us and published by us. Right now we're negotiating. This is very much advanced, close to closure. We have we're finalizing the contracts with our key partners, Microsoft, Epic Games, EA, and Humble Store. The total amount of contracts to be signed amounts to roughly $3 million, and this does not anyhow cannibalize our regular sales. This is something that we can say that is a cherry on the cake, but it's as an amount, but this it is a cherry as on the cake as an amount, but it's the fruit of tough work from our team to find the business opportunities for our projects. This is it as regards 2019, and what's ahead. As Patrick said, we want to increase our scale and the potential, the commercial potential of our projects. We want to go more into multi-platform quality so that our games are easily available for players on all sorts of platforms. This is about increasing the commercial potential of our games, and we want to work on the expansion of our scale. That's why we want to pursue 3 projects parallelly to be able to launch our games that we've developed ourselves more often. And the premiere of Moonlighter has helped us a lot. We had very good meetings in JDC last week as regards the opportunities of concluding new license contracts. We want to reach 4 premieres annually, launched by the publishing, not necessarily developed by us. So these are midterm goals. We wish to be here in a couple of years here and be able to sport the accomplishments of those goals and milestones. So that's it as regards our presentation. Thank you very much. Before we pass to the Q&A session, hopefully there will be some questions, I'd like to tell you that right now we wish to be closer to the investors, even closer than so far. So soon we will be interested in starting a series of meetings with investors, with shareholders, not only in Warsaw, but also in other localities in Poland. We will be announcing our appearance elsewhere, and so you can meet up with us and talk not only in Warsaw, but also elsewhere, because I think we have shareholders countrywide. That's it. And do you have any questions, please? I have a question, because you're talking about cross-platform quality, multi-platform quality. Does it mean that also it's going to be cross-platform? Will you be able to play between or among platforms? And as regards streaming, the new Google service, are you contemplating development in that direction? We believe that streaming is important, is an important direction, that the sector is developing in that direction. So we're definitely considering that. It's way too early to talk about specific partnerships, but we're not precluding anything like that. This is one of the areas we'll be exploring. And as regards the cross-platform quality, would you like to add anything to this? We're not precluding such a possibility if the design of a game permits that, and the use of such a solution is reasonable by all means. You will also understand that it depends on the specific partner and the specific platform. Some partners are inclined in that direction. Some have their reservations, but I don't want to pursue that. But it has to make sense for us, and it has to stream. The game is also the most important thing, and we always be trying to make sure that we do as well for the game as possible. And about streaming, let me add something to this. I perceive those changes, if they occur, and once they occur, as a very large opportunity rather than a threat. We are the suppliers of contents, and the better the contents, the better they're going to be coping in each form of distribution. Streaming has its advantages, because that means smaller expenditure on the game, as Google has shown to us. On a cheap laptop or a cheap console, they'll be able to play perfectly looking games. And from our perspective, additionally, streaming will allow to reduce piracy to zero, really 0.0. It's not going to be available. So I perceive it in a positive way. Good morning. Before we come to key projects such as Project 8, unfortunately, the answers are going to be brief. The question is, to what extent the production of games for all the platforms extends the development process rather than porting. I'm sure it extends it a little bit because even for mobile devices, you don't need to certify, but you do need to certify on consoles, and it definitely extends the development phase. Also, the development phase is a little bit extended. That's why I think we should provide for a time buffer, safety buffer, and of course you need a larger team to do this. And I think that we've grown mature enough to be able to develop games for many platforms at the same time. Before we wanted to do it, but it was not feasible. It just stemmed from the scale. If a team was small, they were basically not capable of doing this, basically. And it's very important, what Patrick was saying, that we don't want to port our games. We want to develop them from scratch in such a way that you could play perfectly on each of those platforms. It's only a matter of 2 sentences, but it changes a lot in the quality of the games that the gamer gets at the end of the day. It also makes sense to mention the technology. We're still using our old technologies. This allows us to be much more dynamic in terms of new platforms. And we're also preparing on the technological side to be more efficient in this context. I cannot fail to ask this question. When can we expect any information about this product? Yes, unfortunately, I have to say, as Blizzard say, as soon as we are ready to smash you. And that's going to be the case. But it's going to be still, it's going to last another moment, and I cannot review any. Kazimierzak, Inwestycja. I have another question about the new contracts. The estimated value of $3 million, roughly 12 million zlotys. I understand that Epic is for PC and electronic cars. You would rather be promoted under product packages. I understand that's the way it's going to be arranged. Yes. These are contracts which are mostly aimed for PC platform and consoles. And another question about those 2 new products that you cannot discuss other than Project 8. And is it about new IPs, totally internal ones that you're developing or will be developing, or are these going to be ones acquired from the outside that exist any place and you would like to breathe new life into them, shall I say? To address those questions briefly, I mean, if I were to address those questions outright, I would have to review too much. And I can only tell you that those 2 new projects are going to be brand new projects, our own in-house projects. Do we have any other questions? About those 2 projects, are they going to be comparable to Project 8, about 20 million zlotys? Yes. There are some questions here in the front. I have one more question about the productions, typically mobile productions, that it's going to provide some revenue source. I'd like to understand the scale of that and where the mobile business is placed there, whether it's going to be sourcing from your existing titles developed for the mobile, or is it like a long-term plan for these revenues to provide a more significant source? Well, I can tell you from the publishing point of view, well, definitely we will be looking at mobile as a platform, as an opportunity platform. If a game fits it, we've always done it, if the game in itself is a good game for a mobile platform, and we will be able to see the commercial potential, it's going to be the case by all means. As regards new publishing projects, we're not also precluding a scenario whereby, well, supposing we could acquire a strictly mobile title from the market that would be a breakthrough product and would fit into our strategy and nature as a publisher, well, then we are by all means open to such games, and we will be actively seeking them and concluding such contracts. I think that as regards the mobile market, indeed, It is a more difficult market for us when we first started because it's dominated by free-to-play games, but also the world is changing, the trends are changing, and we've been observing it right now. And I have to say honestly that this is no longer such an important platform as it used to be, but which doesn't mean that it cannot change going forward. I think it is already changing because if you take a look at what Google and Apple has done to Apple Arcade, in talking to them, we know that those two initiatives are very much targeted at such games as we develop. They want to have quality content, highly innovative content, and they know that mobile platforms in this and mobile stores in the form as they exist are not really capable of ensuring the appropriate success to such games, and that they are a little bit less attractive for developers who are basically exiting to other platforms. Hence, this movement, it's one of the it's one of the reasons, but for us, it's an absolutely great step. A couple of questions. As regards to fairs, can you say whether you'll be present in some industry shows? Yes, I'm sure these are I'm sure they're going to be on Gamescom and PAX West. And as regards as 11-bit studios, and we're also active on B2B basis. We take part in some industry shows. We don't have our stand, but we meet with our partners, with the press, and then we take part in additional events. And we also organize press tours, appear in various places to present our products. But if you want to show our games and show it on show floor, these two industry shows are the ones that are worth visiting. And $3 million, is it upfront or is it like a minimum warranty of royalties or anything? It could be more. Could be more. Thank you. Kamil Klinowski, I'd like to congratulate you on your annual report. It's very nice. It seems that these figures are higher on a summary basis than for the past 7 years. And the second question, there are 5 products in the pipeline, this War of Mine and so on. How do you combine it with the previous ones? And the question also about the publishing. How do you mean to develop the publishing house and take advantage of the tremendous brand you've developed? Let me take the second one. Obviously, if we present what we do on the slides, it has to be simplified by virtue of the thing. And if we say that we have 3 teams, yes, because we're pursuing those 3 important projects from the investor's point of view. But internally, the case can be that the Frostpunk team is largely focused on doing the DLCs that we've mentioned also today, but also other things. And it's only natural, and it's very good that owing to this, we're capable of. Our team is always have their hands full. Whenever we launch a new project, it doesn't mean that we need to have 50 or 60 people on board to carry on. First, you have to develop the concept, then the prototype. It's on paper first, as Premek Marshall was showing. This is a stage when we only need a handful of people, whereas others can focus on extending Frostpunk's life cycle. So we can approach it in a flexible way, and I think that this is a large plus that we can be able that we should be able to approach it in a flexible way and use those teams in the development process. As regards the publishing house, Moonlighter's success story has proved to us, as well as to developers who develop games globally, that this is no coincidence. That we know how to promote games, we know how to talk about them, but we also know how to choose them. We choose partners as well, and we try to develop relationships with them. We want them to choose us for who we are and for what we do. Moonlighter has shown this to the market, demonstrated this to the market, and as one of the colleagues has said, since we've started sporting Moonlighter, since it started being very visible in the market, the perception of our publishing house has changed tremendously. We've shown that we know how to do it, that we have the right idea, and from our perspective, we've proved this to us, and hence the decision to change the scale, to invest in larger projects, to seek larger partners. And this is indeed our idea. You didn't expect us to be a publisher to launch 30, or 20 or 30 games per annum. We're very choosy, and we are gonna keep being choosy, but we want to make sure that those games fit our portfolio, and that we are the best partner, and our partner also believes that we are the perfect partner, perfect match. If I may add something, those two projects that we've concluded these are the new scale projects, so they fall into the latter category. Hello, Michał Bieczkiewicz. I have a question about the future. That's a question about the announcement that appeared on Skillshot. Now you're smiling. You know what it's about. It's about the announcement where you seek as a senior combat designer. So one of the requirements is experience in working from the perspective of a game from the first or third person perspective, and it's about combat. We're talking about project 8 or 10. Since it was not mentioned in the announcement, that means that I cannot share this with you, but it's nice that this should have provoked some response and some noise about it. But I think we've shown in the past that we were courageous, that we want to do interesting things, exciting things, original things that players enjoy, things that have a large potential, commercial potential. Project 8 is very different from Frostpunk, just as Frostpunk is very different from this war of mine. So is Project 9. And let me add that console players should enjoy Project 1 very much. It's not without a reason that it appeared here. Thank you. Now the second question is going to be about the prices. First about P8. Now you've shown that each subsequent game was more expensive. So it started with $10, then $20, $30. Is Project 8 so large, and it's going to be there's going to be so much content that you think that the next premiere will be valued at $40? That's the plan. And as you've seen on the slides, this is a matter of working on a step-by-step basis to reach a certain level. I think we'll be able to afford to make sure that this is going to be a more expensive game. We'll just wait and see. But generally, it was also shown in one of Patrick's games that we want to go for larger projects. We want to... What did you call it? That alternative? Did you use the word alternatives? Yes, we want to provide an alternative. An alternative means that we want to deliver other experience, other gamer experience worth the same. I would add for myself that we're talking about an increasing group of players, because we are just expanding the group of gamers, and we're thereby expanding our market. And you can also be sure that it's going to be the case for P8, not only owing to the platform, but also the nature of the publication. And the last question, we'll see you on March 28th. We are here on March 28th. Can we have a comment on the Q1 results? I think the CEO mentioned. I think I haven't misheard when you talked about Frostpunk. I think I said that the revenues generated by Frostpunk this year, that Frostpunk has generated, I mean, all in all, on Steam, were higher than this War of Mine generated on Steam. over 4 years since the premiere. So the revenue figure for this War of Mine have been larger than on Steam have been larger than was this War of Mine on Steam. So was it more than 14 million? I mean, you have to remember that what we've shown, this War of Mine has been on various platforms. So the revenues we've shown were not only from Steam, also other platforms, including the mobile platform. Thank you very much for this, and I'd like to ask you about the Mac version, which is still not there. It probably ruined the marketing plan or on Q1. That's why I have this question. Yes, we are working on the Mac version, but it has not ruined any plans of ours. You have to remember that this is the Mac version. So this was a task that was outsourced from our company because the Mac platform, in terms of the games, it doesn't have a large potential. And I think that we should be focusing internally on the most important things for us. That's why this port has been outsourced, but that's also one of the threats involved that you mentioned. There was a question about combat, and I'd like to ask you about your approach to multiplayer games, PvP, and so is it going to be on P8 or P10? Well, I don't think we can share it with you. Time will come for this. Albert Roginski, long term. I'd like to join in the congratulations for the best results ever. Thank you again. I'd like to ask you a question about Children of Morta, a game a little bit skipped by the mainstream, and yet it was mentioned by Microsoft last year as 10 most interesting indie from the world. What's going to be the price of the game, and if you could just share the split with the producer? As regards the split, unfortunately, these are contracts, we cannot disclose it. Yes, I agree with you that the game may have been skipped now, but I think it's been on purpose. As regards the price, we're planning to launch it at $20, 20, 21, 22. One more question. When can you expect a premiere, the launching of Frostpunk on consoles? Please be patient with us and observe our communications channels. And alluding to the Children of Morta, we're right now preparing for a pre-launch campaign. Actually, we've started it. We know that the media are quite choosy these days, so we have not spammed the media too much with information about the game, not to dilute our communication. As we've shown in the presentation, it's going to be launched on all the platforms this summer. So we need a couple of so we need a couple of months to do this pre-release hype, and the lack of presence in the media was only stemmed from the fact that we wanted to make sure that the media would be interested in taking on this topic in the most important pre-launch window. I think your most important IP is Frostpunk. It would be a shame not to use it in a different format. Maybe you could develop an RPG or a different game format. Quite frankly, that was our plan for Frostpunk, to develop a very spacious IP. So we're not saying yes, we're not saying no. And quite honestly, we don't basically know as yet what our next step will be in this direction. We will be just launching this work, so we still have some time to think about it, to consider that. So no decisions have been made, but this IP has been developed in such a way that we could be able to do it if we choose to. I think there's one more question in the back. It's a question about Frostpunk. We've reached the end of last year's roadmap, and right now we have 3 teams, 3 new projects. Does this mean that we shouldn't expect any additional paid content for Frostpunk. You should definitely expect additional paid content for Frostpunk. We haven't developed, shown you a roadmap for this year because we are developing it in a slightly different way. So there's going to be a season pass and some additional paid content for Frostpunk. It's going to be a very large add-on. It's comparable to the first Frostpunk campaign, so the gamers should be satisfied. And it's still not the last word, we will say, in the case of this specific game. There seems to be a question. Unfortunately, it's off the mic, we cannot hear it. We would rather not answer that question before we've announced that game and started talking about it. Again, there seems to be a question off the mic. We cannot see, we cannot hear it. Yes, the last part of with this War of Mine history is almost finished. Good morning. I have a question from individual investors from the forum, so I'll try to choose something that hasn't been addressed yet. What is the current headcount of the company, and how and what are your plans for the end of this year? Right now we have 100 people, and I think at the end of the year it should be between 120, 130. It's hard to be very precise. It's not only up to us. It also depends on the people's decisions, on the decisions of the people who join us. So that's it. At the end of the day, I mean, in the midterm, in the context of our goals, we think we need slightly above 200 people to be able to achieve those goals. How many DLCs are you planning for Frostpunk for this year? Because now we've heard about one, and I understand that there's going to be two paid DLCs for this year. Well, the season pass is not free. What about the Mac version? It will probably not be largely reflected into the revenues, but when can we expect the Mac version, and which lessons have you drawn from this rather, I think, unpleasant experience from outsourcing? And the question is, how are you protected in your contract against such negative scenarios? Negative scenarios, can you develop on this? Well, negative scenarios that basically that the subcontractor failed to observe the deadline you announced, and actually they failed to do it 3 hours before the release, and it was not a very nice thing from the company's point of view, because players expected that product, and the communication was, let's face it, that it would be in Q4 2018. We didn't have it in Q4 2018. There was a delay. So generally the project was both postponed and I think rather failed. Well, let me take that question. You expect from us to deliver everything up to the point, up to the second, in the shortest deadline, top global quality with the best global marketing campaign ever. Oh, we were trying to do it, obviously, but it doesn't mean that we will be perfect in doing anything. If we have to choose, we'll go for quality over timing, and it's one of the cases. And likewise, for similar reasons, we're not telling you whether a game will be launched in a year or 2 or 6 months, because it's more important for us to make sure that it has the form that we care for. And Frostpunk, the Frostpunk case is also one of the illustrations of this. But we want to do our utmost to satisfy gamers, because we're aware of the response we have. I mean, that's no tragedy. It's not that players don't understand the situation. We've heard rather voices saying that they do understand. Our community is very nice, and we're very happy with the way they support us, and people understand us. By the way, it makes sense to remind you of what the colleagues were saying during the presentation, that now we're going towards the multi-platform quality from scratch, and this eliminates such activities going forward. So we're just learning our lessons. So my question is, when can you roughly expect that project, that product? How long is it going to last? It's not going to be long. One more question from individual investors about P8. When can we expect any major announcements of anything? Well, basically, is it this year we're talking about? I'm just laughing at the marketing guy. The marketing guy is thinking. So it's basically whether we'll be able to hear something more specific other than the name Project 8. Again, I cannot unfortunately address that question because I don't know the answer to that question. Because we're preparing this, we keep working on the materials to be launched, but we're going to be launching them when we decide that this is the moment to provide us the best market leverage. I mean, please don't get me wrong. I don't want to condition it on any external influence, because at the end of the day, we want to do as good a job as possible to deliver the best results possible. One more question about the new publishing cycle. When can we expect, as of this year, when will the company be launching one game every 18, I think it was, months? So when do you think the publishing cycle will reach that scale? Looking at where we are, it was rather about the internal things. As we look at where we are in terms of the development of our teams, internal teams in the studio, Project 8 should be the one to start the new stage of ours, where the time till the next premiere between P8 and the next project should be significantly shorter. So the chances are that in 2020 there's going to be a new game each year. Is that a tricky question about the launching date of P8? I only mean a rough estimate. It's like we described it. These are our midterm goals. Thank you. If you have no further questions, one more. Let me ask one more financial question. Actually, not a question has been asked so far about the financial results, financial report. I'd like to ask you about your new investment into your new commercial seat. You've bought a building already. When are you planning to move there? Because in 2019 you will probably be incurring both rental costs as well as depreciation costs of the building, and probably the financing costs due to the debt incurred. Do you think you could move by the end of this year? Yes, exactly. That's the plan. We wish to move there by the end of this year. We still have some security buffers, and that's exactly the plan, to change our commercial seat by the end of this year. Okay, and now the next question about your shares in GTC. Patrick said that you're going to GTC with the children of Morta, Moonlighter, More, and Wing Wing. I'd like to ask you what Wing Wing is. Yes, Wing Wing appeared in the meetings with the partners that we had sessions agreed on the GDC. So the publication will take place with a slight delay, but this stems from the embargo we have. So Wing Wing will be launched very now soon. You won't have to wait long. Yeah, you've checked right. There seems to have been a question. It's a question of a reboot. Oh, you're really ruining my plan for today. Yes, we will be there on the reboot. I'm not including reboot as part of the events I mentioned before, because it's a B2B conference, just as GDC. So there's no major consumer community, but we will be there on the reboot, and we will be continuing all the activities started on GDC. It looks like we've exhausted your questions. Hopefully the answers have been satisfying. Thank you very much again for coming, and see you next time. Thank you.